Hello, friends, and welcome to the show. So, this episode's going to be me raving about Joe Biden and how Joe Biden's number one. He's protecting white America from the racial jungle. And I'll explain why. Because just in, a South Texas migrant facility is now at 729% of its legal capacity. Children are going hungry and are only able to shower once every 7 days. And that reporting's done by the Daily Mail. So, I wonder if Time Magazine is going to update their cover from January 2018, where it has Trump looking down at a crying Mexican girl saying, "Welcome to America." Basically, they're saying Trump was ripping little kids from the arms of their family and throwing them in cages. But guess what? If he was only doing it for days at a time, Joe Biden's now doing it for weeks. Joe Biden is ripping more kids from their family than Trump could ever have imagined. So they say Trump is a racist. Trump was a xenophobe. Yet, who was the one going on the record saying, "I don't want my children attending a racial jungle"? That would be Joe Biden. That is not Donald Trump. And what's even more crazy is that Democrats don't care. They care more about Republicans' responses to what's happening at the border than what's actually happening at the border. So let's jump over to Joaquin Castro. With McCarthy and Republican politicians at the border, it's important to remember that they supported family separations and forcing families to remain in refugee camps. Their sudden concerns for children are hollow and cynical. They do not support solutions for humanitarian relief. No, they support solutions for humanitarian relief. They don't support 729% of the legal capacity. They don't support kids only being able to take a shower once a week or not being fed at all. And then Democrats not even talking about it. So I respond, Joaquin Castro cares more about dunking on conservatives than children being ripped from their family and thrown in cages for weeks along the border. Partisan hack, because that's exactly what he is. Joaquin Castro is a walking piece of garbage. Both of the Castro brothers are just political garbage. All they care about is moving up in politics. People be damned. Their constituents be damned. They don't care about people. When the power went out, they didn't care about you or me. They cared about themselves. They cared about scoring points. They don't care about their constituents. They're just horrible individuals. They're horrible politicians. And this just goes to show. So not once did he basically say, "I feel bad," because he even said, at one point, he was like, "Trump is such a monster, and my systemic racism in the country is so bad, and I'm brown and my kids are brown and my wife is brown as well, and I look at my kids and I'm afraid for them." So thinking that, hey dude, you're Hispanic origin, I'm a Hispanic origin, and I see myself, my wife is from Mexico, I see myself or my wife or my daughter, any one of us could be thrown in those cages by Joe Biden, because Joe Biden wants a racially segregated country. He wants kids in cages. He wants Mexicans in cages along the border. He wants black kids in cages throughout the United States. That's all Joe Biden is known for. Yet Joaquin Castro doesn't actually talk about kids in cages. He just says, well, isn't it hypocritical that Republicans are now concerned about kids in cages? Well, maybe they're now concerned about kids in cages because the facilities are now running at 700% capacity, where these kids are starving and not being able to take showers for a week at a time, not be able to contact their family, and are being kept in the facility longer than legally allowed. Maybe that's the conservatives' problems. Maybe when the system is running the way it should be, maybe you have a problem with it because you think it's inhumane, and conservatives didn't have a problem with it, saying, hey, look, we have laws on the books and we're just following the laws on the books. But now Democrats are breaking the laws of our country by running concentration camps within our own country. And what? You're just supposed to sit by and say nothing? I'm assuming Joaquin Castro is a Mexican immigrant, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. But I'll just say, as a Hispanic politician, he should be speaking out for the rights of these people on the border. Instead, he's trying to dunk on conservatives because he's a piece of garbage. He doesn't care about the little kids on the border. He cares about scoring points. He cares about maybe running for the Senate. He doesn't care about the kids on the border. He doesn't care about people in San Antonio. He cares about himself. He cares about his brother. He cares about lying. He cares about falsifying and manufacturing evidence and still tripping and falling and failing on a slam dunk impeachment trial. I don't understand how this person is still in office. He needs to be primaried by a Democrat with someone with I don't know, some sense of principle, some sort of moral compass of what's right or wrong, because this shouldn't be this shouldn't be a partisan issue. Kids in cages at 729% capacity is unacceptable. Piece of garbage. Piece of garbage. Joaquin Castro is a horrible human being. We could not have achieved this without Joe Biden's leadership. Hundreds of children and teenagers have been detained at a Border Patrol tent facility in packed conditions, with some sleeping on the floor because there aren't enough mats, according to nonprofit lawyers who conduct oversight of detention centers. That's from PBS. I believe I covered that on my video on Friday, but that's still kind of in response to Mr. Castro's tweet. Mr. Castro does not care that kids are sleeping on mats and now on bare concrete floors, on metal benches, or concrete benches. He does not care because his party is the one caging brown kids and now systemically caging black kids as well. He doesn't care because that's the party that the Democrats are. They're the party of, we're trying to avoid a racial jungle. We're trying to racially segregate. We're trying to throw people back on the plantation. That's the Democrat Party. It's bananas. Before I get to the next tweet, guys, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Smash the like button. I'm so sorry about that. And please go to notcensoredyet.com and have a look around. If you'd like to contribute to the show, there's a page called Donate. There's various links available. Every little bit helps. Let's keep going. From Julio Rosas. Just spent 3 hours right on the U.S.-Mexico border, and I'm still in shock at how many people illegally crossed during that time. I knew it was happening, but it's different when you see it up close. Story to come on what I saw. I will say this is definitely a crisis. In 3 hours, 263 immigrants made their way toward the processing site Border Patrol has set up after they illegally crossed into the U.S. The number is just the people who wanted to be caught, and it included women, small children, and unaccompanied minors. So you see photos of a bunch of people. As if to highlight how many people were crossing the border, some got lost from their group after it became dark. Myself, a Border Patrol agent, and their leader went out to find them. We kept coming across other groups of immigrants before finding the lost ones. And honestly, it's also dangerous. So keep in mind, there's people who don't want to be found. So if you're out there, there's a reason why Border Patrol agents are armed, because you don't know the people who don't want to be found. There might be a reason why they don't want to be found. So it's extremely dangerous, this coverage on the border. And Mr. Rosas is doing just an outstanding service to the community, to the country, by reporting this, because it is extremely dangerous. You don't know what's going to happen along the border. Each time I asked those who passed by us if they liked Biden, they always replied with an enthusiastic yes. While there are certainly other factors for a massive influx we are seeing, the Biden administration's rhetoric and policies are a big factor. And that's something to keep in mind. When the Biden administration, when Mr. Mayorkas basically says, we're not saying don't come at all, guys. We're just saying don't come right now. We're just not ready for you. So don't come right now. You know, well, we'll get the welcome mat ready. We'll get the whole kit bang shaboodle ready, and we'll be ready for you guys later. So don't come now, come later. What does that say to people? That Biden is going to welcome the illegal immigrants. And so they're just coming now because guess what? They want to come now. They don't want to come later. They want to come now. They've been avoiding it because they know Trump would have just turned them away, basically saying, no, not on my watch. We're a country of laws. We're a sovereign country with borders, and you are going to respect our borders. Sorry, it's been a couple days since I've talked this much. Back in the same heavily used trail south of McAllen, we were in the area for less than 10 minutes, and 49 illegal immigrants, many of them children, walked by. So, guys, like I said, you're going to have people basically sending their kids by themselves across the border because they know their kids will get sent into these facilities. Because even at 729%, that is still far better conditions than they could be living in some of these countries in Latin America. And they say, hey, the foster system in the United States is still better than living on the streets in whatever country these kids were in. It's bananas. This is Joe Biden's doing by being soft on immigration, the policy of unadulterated tolerance. This is leading to a crisis on the border. And the only people that are going to suffer from it are low income people in the United States. So they say that there's a disproportional number of minorities that are making minimum wage. Who do you think is going to also be competing for those minimum wage jobs? Minimum wage jobs. It's going to be all these illegal immigrants coming across the border once they get status to be able to work in this country, because we're not sending them back. And you can't just allow them in the country and not let them work, right? So we're going to have to let them work at some point. So when they're allowed to work in the country, they're going to be competing for those $15 an hour jobs that the Democrats have been promising, those union labor jobs that Joe Biden has been promising. So you're basically flooding the market with more laborers than there are jobs when there's already high unemployment. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And what exactly is the end goal? I don't understand what the end goal is here, guys. And that's what concerns me. It's just the stupidity of unadulterated tolerance. It's going to lead to bad things happening. To Abigail Marone, many of children were visibly emotional, especially siblings of different genders who had been separated and placed in distinct sections of the Donna facility. The children told her about how they never saw the sun. I believe I covered this story last week as well, but I liked Abigail Maroon's take on that. For me, again, without Biden's leadership, this wouldn't be possible. CNN report, children detained at the U.S.-Mexico border haven't been able to shower for days or call their parents. Also covered that last week. Biden child concentration camps from comfortably smug. I guess I was ahead of the power curve on this, guys. I'm still new to the game, but I'm trying to keep my ear to the ground about what's going on. Since I live in Texas, this is pretty important to me because I've noticed even in San Antonio, we've been having an increase of the homeless population, and it's really concerning. And San Antonio is extremely blue. It's kind of a blueberry in the tomato soup. You know, San Antonio, Houston, Austin are just, in Dallas, are like blueberries and tomato soup. And that's where you see a lot of the homeless, you see a lot of the crime, you see a lot of the progressive movements, and you see a lot of the progressive failures are in these big cities of Texas. Jumping over to the next story from Jim Garrity. I think that's how you say that. Kamala Harris called the old policies a human rights abuse being committed by the U.S. government. So, what would she call kids sleeping on the floor, being hungry, and only showering once in as many as 7 days, and not being able to call family? That's a fair question, because these conditions are worse than Trump ever had. And people forget this. They say Orange Man is bad. They say, well, at least it's not Trump. Trump never had these policies. Trump was never this bad. Trump was bad, right? Trump may have made you feel bad. That was the thing, right? So Trump was a butthole. But that's what he was loved for. Trump was loved for being a butthole. That's what made him famous. He was on The Apprentice. What was his most famous line? You're fired. He was made famous by firing people and making them cry, for humiliating people on live TV. That's why he was famous. But he wasn't evil. He was just a butthole. You know, there's a book. I hope they serve beer in hell, right? And basically the first chapter or two, I could be wrong. It could be a different book, but I'm pretty sure it was I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell, where he was basically creating the distinction between being an asshole and being a dick. Trump was an asshole. He wasn't a dick, because it's hard to distinguish the two. But basically, like, an asshole is the guy that just says things and it might hurt your feelings, but it's true. And then, but it's not necessarily to hurt your feelings. It's because it needs to be said, right? It's like when you call a fat person fat because they're fat, you're being an asshole, you're not being a dick. But if you're just making fun of somebody for no reason whatsoever, then you're kind of being a dick. So there's the difference between the two. And I think the Biden administration are just being extremely dickish, while the Trump administration was just a bunch of assholes. They said what needed to be said, but they were just crass about it. They were just extremely blunt. Think of them as what does Ben Shapiro say? Trump is a hammer in search of a nail, right? He's just a blunt object, basically just saying things, and just basically just fixing issues, because that's all he does. And he doesn't care about your feelings because he's a billionaire. Why should he care? He knows a minute of his time is worth more than your life. So it doesn't matter, right? So he's going to basically tell you what needs to be said, and he's going to get done what needed to be done. Whereas Joe Biden is going to lie to your face and then cage more brown and black kids than any conservative had ever dreamed of. So I don't understand how the GOP is the party of racism and imprisonment and all this stuff when it's all Joe Biden's doing, and Kamala Harris. Because Kamala Harris, like I said, and I think it was my last episode where I said it was the 12th Amendment. It was actually the 13th Amendment. I was pretty excited while I was talking. So it's actually using a loophole in the 13th Amendment, where basically slavery was banned unless you were imprisoned. So Kamala Harris used a loophole in the 13th Amendment to suppress evidence exonerating black men from either death row or basically releasing them on parole, so she can use them as slave labor to fight California wildfires. And that wouldn't be possible without Joe Biden's assistance. So we won't have the vaccine available for everyone until May 1st if we are forced to vaccinate the illegal immigrants swarming the southern border. Washington Post: ICE has no clear plan for vaccinating thousands of detained immigrants fighting deportation. So why are we vaccinating people at the border? We're still not vaccinating Americans as fast as we should. Why are we vaccinating illegal immigrants at the border? Is it our responsibility? I have family that lives in Mexico, and my mother-in-law, when she was flying here, she was on a packed flight, and everybody on the flight came with the goal of being vaccinated. So non-US citizens, they were Mexican citizens with money, and they're flying to the United States so they can get their vaccination. What's wrong with that? Why is that happening? I don't really understand. Why aren't we vaccinating Americans first? If you're going to impose these lockdowns and these false gates as to when we can open, then you need to be vaccinating Americans. You can't be vaccinating illegal immigrants or people from different countries. You need to be vaccinating Americans first. We don't deserve this level of presidential leadership. Sorry, I've been doing these like sarcastic tweets because that's the only way I can function. More than 715 refugees from around the world who expected to start new lives in the US have had their flights canceled in recent weeks because President Biden postponed an overhaul of his predecessor's limits on refugee admissions. That's bananas, right? So to spit in Trump's face, he's screwing over 715 refugees? The segregationist in chief, friends, the segregationist in chief. Just remember that. Biden just makes you feel so good about just avoiding a racial jungle, doesn't he? Refugee flights canceled as Biden fails to lift Trump cutback. More than 715 refugees have postponed travel to the United States after waiting for years in camps. Agencies that assist refugees poised to enter the country were notified by the State Department this week that all travel would be suspended until the president sets a new target for admissions this year. Each year, the president must set up a cap on the number of refugees that the U.S. will admit. Former President Trump lowered that number to a historic low of 15,000. As a result, tens of thousands of people who have already completed the complex process for resettling in the U.S. have been stranded abroad, often in overcrowded refugee camps where many have been waiting for years. These are refugees approved to come here who have been waiting for years and whose flights have been canceled numerous times, said Jennifer Slime. Sorry to laugh at your last name. Senior Vice President for Resettlement, Asylum, and Integration at the International Rescue Committee. They have a travel date and are then left in a precarious circumstances when they are prevented from coming, Ms. Slime said, anticipating a new presidential determination to lift the ceiling on emissions and allow entry of refugees from countries Mr. Trump has excluded. The State Department began booking refugees on flights last month, but it had to start canceling the flights on February 26th after still no action from the president. It suspended all travel earlier this week, according to an email sent to resettlement agencies. The delay, for which the White House has offered no explanation, underscores the challenges that Mr. Biden confronts as he seeks to deliver on his pledge to reverse the immigration policies of his predecessor. So, in order to what? Spite his face, he's cutting off his nose? I don't understand. So, Joe Biden is being worse to refugees than again Trump ever has. Did Trump outright ban refugees from ever entering the country? No, he lowered the amount of refugees, basically saying, hey, we can't just say everybody's a refugee. We need to create strict limits as to what's considered a refugee. And basically, we have laws, we're going to follow them. Joe Biden's basically saying, well, because Orange Man is bad, no refugees are going to be allowed to enter the United States. So just more segregationist or more segregation from our segregationist in chief, more avoiding this racial jungle from Joe Biden. I don't understand how Democrats are just looking the other way. You have Democrats again, like Joaquin Castro, looking the other way, trying to score points on conservatives when Joe Biden is screwing kids over at the border. He's screwing people over at the border. He's caging brown kids at the border at above 700% capacity. He's doing that. Kids are going hungry in cages. They're not taking showers. That is unsanitary. They can't contact their family. They can't reach out for help. Some of them are not seeing the sun. And now he's not allowing refugees who are escaping persecution from entering our country. This is Joe Biden's doing. This is no longer Trump's America. No matter how much I dislike that, right? I enjoyed Trump's circus of leadership, right? Because it was definitely chaotic. But it was leadership. This is not leadership. Consistently blaming Trump for everything when it is Joe Biden's doing, that's not leadership. When you have the White House saying, well, we adopted failed border policies. No, you undid Trump's border policies. And as soon as you undid those policies, you now have this crisis. There's a cause and effect. There's not even a correlation there. It's a literally, why are you coming here? Well, because Joe Biden. We're wearing Joe Biden let us in t-shirts. So Joe Biden, because of Joe Biden, we are coming into the country. It is Joe Biden's fault that this is happening. What's happening with the refugees is not Trump's fault. Joe Biden has not put forth a policy allowing refugees to enter the country. That is not Trump's fault. Joe Biden could sign an executive order saying that those 715 people could enter the country, but he didn't. He wants to see brown people die in cages. That's all Joe Biden has ever dreamed of, is avoiding that racial jungle by any means necessary. So that's going to be it for now, friends. I'll probably be posting another video today because it's been a very heavy news cycle this weekend, excuse me. So I'll see you all in a couple hours. Have a good one. Bye.